The air was tense. For years, the world had watched the Duke and Duchess of Sussex navigate the glare of royal scrutiny, media frenzy, and personal drama. But no one expected what happened next. In a moment that would shock the monarchy, the public, and royal watchers across the globe, Prince Harry stepped forward, not with a statement about his charity work or another tell-all interview, but with a public apology. Not just any apology. An apology directed at his own brother, Prince William, and his father, King Charles. And the reason? Meghan Markle, his wife, his partner, the woman who had shared his dreams, his triumphs, and his struggles. She had a secret, a hidden bank account. And, according to sources inside the palace, it wasn't just hidden. It contained sums of money that raised questions about loyalty, trust, and integrity at the highest levels of the royal family. Before we continue, please hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and turn on the notification bell for updates. Imagine, for a moment, the world from Harry's perspective. You are a prince, groomed for duty, raised under the strictest expectations, yet constantly scrutinized by every eye, every camera, every headline. You love someone deeply, you fight for her happiness, and you believe in the life you are building together. And then you find out that this person has been hiding a secret that could destroy not only your reputation, but also fracture the family you hold dear. How would you respond? What would you say? For Harry, the decision was immediate and public. He could no longer carry the weight of secrecy or deception. He had to confront the world, and the apology he delivered did more than just admit a wrong. It exposed fractures in a family that had seemed untouchable for centuries. The revelation didn't emerge from gossip or rumor alone. It came from meticulous investigation, whispers in the corridors of the palace, and a trail of financial breadcrumbs that even the most seasoned royal advisors could not ignore. The hidden bank account was uncovered in an unexpected twist during a review of financial assets meant to protect Harry and William's inheritance and security. It was a discovery that left the palace staff speechless, and it ignited a chain of events that would spiral into public outrage. Sources indicate that the sums involved were not trivial. They were large enough to raise questions about intent, motivation, and possible manipulation. Was this merely a financial oversight, or was there something far more calculated behind it? When the news broke, social media erupted. The public couldn't get enough of the scandal. Headlines screamed accusations of theft, deception, and betrayal. Comment sections filled with polarized opinions. Some defended Meghan, calling the exposure an invasion of privacy, while others condemned her, accusing her of undermining the royal family she married into. Memes circulated within hours, exaggerating the drama, highlighting the irony, and feeding the insatiable curiosity of an audience that had long been fascinated by the Sussexes' every move. But amidst the frenzy, one question dominated. How would Harry respond? Would he stand by Meghan, or would he finally acknowledge the truth and the consequences? To understand the full magnitude of this story, one must consider the delicate balance Harry has always tried to maintain between loyalty and love. From his earliest days, he was shaped by loss, by the public's unrelenting gaze, and by the legacy of Princess Diana. Her death left him with a complex set of values, a deep understanding of the fragility of trust, and a fierce protective instinct for those he loved. Enter Meghan Markle, a woman whose charisma, ambition, and influence captured Harry's heart. Together, they represented a modern fairy tale, a union of love and vision. But fairy tales rarely survive in a world where money, power, and family expectations collide. In this case, the collision was catastrophic and the fallout public. Harry's public apology was unlike anything the royal family had seen before. It was raw, emotionally charged, and candid. He acknowledged his mistakes, admitted the pain caused to his father and brother, and expressed a desire to rebuild trust. Yet, even as he spoke, there was tension in every word. Observers noted the subtle contradictions in his statement. On one hand, a deep love for Meghan. On the other, a recognition that secrecy had consequences. His apology was not just a personal admission. It was a public acknowledgement of the fractures in the family structure, and an invitation for the world to witness the private unraveling of the monarchy's carefully maintained image. But the apology was only the beginning. Behind the scenes, palace aides scrambled to manage the fallout. Advisors debated the appropriate response, weighing the risks of public confrontation against the need to protect the monarchy's reputation. Private communications revealed frustration, disappointment, and a sense of betrayal that even seasoned royal insiders found difficult to contain. King Charles, known for his measured and strategic approach, reportedly expressed profound disappointment in private meetings, emphasizing the need for transparency and accountability. Prince William, on the other hand, was said to be shocked and emotionally wounded, struggling to reconcile his brother's loyalty with his sense of betrayal. It was a delicate, almost impossible situation, with no easy resolutions. The hidden bank account itself was shrouded in mystery. What exactly was its purpose? How long had it been active? And most importantly, why had it remained secret? Investigators discovered a complex web of transactions, some of which were legitimate, others less so, hinting at the possibility of financial maneuvering that went beyond ordinary discretion. Sources suggest that the account was connected to offshore holdings, investments, and other assets that were never disclosed to Harry or the royal family. While the legal implications remain unclear, the moral and emotional weight was undeniable. Harry was forced to confront a reality that had been carefully concealed from him, challenging his perceptions of loyalty, honesty, and trust. This scandal raises broader questions about the intersection of love, power, and wealth in high-profile relationships. How does one navigate marriage when personal ambition and financial secrecy intersect? When loyalty to a spouse conflicts with loyalty to family, what is the right course of action? For Harry, the choice was not easy, and the consequences will be felt for years to come. His public apology was more than an emotional release. It was a statement of intent, a declaration that honesty must prevail, even when it hurts those we love. And yet, even as he spoke, the world wondered, would it be enough? Could an apology repair the damage done, or was the fracture now permanent? For viewers, the stakes are immediate. This is not just a story of royal scandal. It is a story about human relationships, about trust, betrayal, and the difficult choices that define our lives. Harry's decision to go public forces us to confront uncomfortable truths about secrecy, loyalty, and accountability. It asks us to consider our own values and the lengths we would go to protect those we love, or the limits of forgiveness when betrayal is exposed. And while the media continues to dissect every word, every expression, and every implied motive, one thing is clear: the story is far from over. Each revelation brings us closer to understanding the complex dynamics that govern one of the world's most scrutinized families. As we delve deeper into this exposé, we will uncover not just the financial intricacies, but the personal dramas, the strategic maneuvers, and the emotional upheavals that have defined this crisis. We will hear from insiders, analyze documents, and examine the sequence of events that led Harry to make the unprecedented choice of publicly apologizing. We will explore Meghan's role, the hidden accounts, and the ripple effects that threaten to reshape the royal family's public image. And along the way, we will reveal secrets that no one outside the palace has fully understood until now. But here's the question that hangs in the air, tantalizing and unresolved. Why did Harry choose to go public now? What tipped the balance from private struggle to public admission? And perhaps most importantly, how will this apology affect the future of his relationships with William, Charles, and the monarchy itself? These questions will guide our journey through this scandal, each chapter peeling back another layer of intrigue, emotion, and revelation. And as we prepare to enter the first chapter, one thing is certain. It all began quietly, almost imperceptibly. No headlines, no sudden media storm, just whispers and a trail of numbers that refused to make sense. For weeks, palace accountants had been conducting routine audits, examining estates, trusts, and financial holdings meant to safeguard the Sussexes' wealth. It was a standard procedure, a precautionary measure in a world where public scrutiny never slept. But amid the spreadsheets and balance sheets, something unusual appeared, an account that had never been disclosed to Harry or the royal family. At first, it seemed like a clerical oversight, but as they dug deeper, the truth revealed itself. This was no simple mistake. This was a secret, hidden away, with a balance large enough to make even the most experienced royal financial advisors pause. Imagine discovering this while sitting in a quiet office, expecting routine numbers, only to find a mystery that could redefine a family's trust. That is exactly what happened to the team who stumbled upon Meghan Markle's hidden bank account. Every transaction, every transfer, every deposit was meticulously examined. It was clear that this account had been active for years, carefully concealed from those who mattered most. The figures were significant, involving sums that could rival salaries of entire corporations. And as palace insiders describe it, the feeling in the room was one of shock, disbelief, and fear. Not just for the money, but for what the secrecy implied about loyalty and integrity. For Harry, the revelation was earth-shattering. Here he was, someone who had dedicated his life to family and service, suddenly confronted with a secret that called everything into question. How could someone he trusted implicitly, someone he loved deeply, be keeping such a major secret from him? The emotional weight was immense, layered with betrayal, confusion, and heartbreak. Harry had spent years protecting Meghan, defending her in the media, and advocating for their shared life. And now, the very thing he had been shielding her from, judgment, exposure, and accountability, was no longer avoidable. It had come to light, and he had to face it. Palace staff, for their part, were scrambling. Advisors debated whether to confront Harry privately or prepare for public disclosure. There were urgent conversations, meetings held behind closed doors, and a level of secrecy that had rarely been seen before. The stakes were enormous. This was not just about money. It was about perception, trust, and the fragile fabric of family loyalty. How the royal family handled this revelation could set the tone for the rest of the year, perhaps even for the rest of Harry's life within the monarchy. Every word, every decision, carried weight far beyond the numbers on a spreadsheet. The hidden account itself was complex. It was not a simple checking account tucked away for convenience. Sources indicate that it was linked to multiple offshore holdings, investments in international markets, and assets that were not easily traceable. Transactions appeared deliberately structured to avoid detection, a trail carefully obscured by layers of financial sophistication. Legal experts have noted that while secrecy alone is not illegal, in this context it raised serious ethical questions. Why hide money from a spouse, from family, or from the very institution meant to safeguard wealth and legacy? What was the intention behind these actions, and what consequences might they carry? Harry's discovery forced him into a whirlwind of emotion and contemplation. He had to reconcile his love for Meghan with his duty to his family and the monarchy. Could he protect her while acknowledging the reality of the situation? Could he maintain the public image of the Sussexes while dealing with a private betrayal of this magnitude? Each thought seemed to collide with the next, creating a storm of doubt, fear, and determination. And as palace insiders reveal, the moment Harry learned the full extent of the hidden account, he realized that secrecy could no longer be an option. He had to confront the truth, both publicly and privately. The first reactions from William and Charles were telling. Prince William, known for his protective instincts and unyielding adherence to protocol, was reportedly stunned. His initial response was disbelief. How could this have happened under their watch? How could Harry be kept in the dark while Meghan managed finances and secrecy? The tension between brothers, already complicated by years of public scrutiny and personal disagreements, escalated instantly. And for King Charles, the news struck at the heart of his responsibilities as a father and monarch. The hidden account was not just a family issue. It was a potential public scandal, one that required careful navigation to prevent lasting damage to the monarchy's reputation. Sources indicate that initial discussions about the hidden account were tense, emotional, and fraught with accusation. Advisors urged discretion, emphasizing the need for calm and strategy. But emotions ran high, and the raw impact of betrayal was impossible to ignore. Harry was caught between protecting Meghan and protecting his family, a delicate balancing act that required both courage and restraint. Every decision made in the days following the discovery had repercussions, not just for the family, but for the public narrative that would inevitably emerge. The secrecy surrounding the account also added a layer of intrigue that fueled public fascination. Leaks hinted at mysterious transactions, offshore accounts, and assets in locations that few could have anticipated. The media, ever vigilant, caught wind of these details and began to speculate on motive, intent, and the implications for royal finances. Headlines suggested betrayal, scandal, and even theft. Commentators debated the morality of financial secrecy within marriage and the royal family. Social media exploded with theories, accusations, and speculation, amplifying the pressure on Harry to respond and on Meghan to defend herself. Yet even as the world buzzed with speculation, the emotional core of the revelation remained intensely private. Harry grappled with feelings of hurt, betrayal, and frustration. He questioned the choices that had led to this moment, wondering how trust had been compromised and whether it could ever be rebuilt. For someone whose life has been shaped by public scrutiny, the stakes were both personal and monumental. Every decision carried the potential for public fallout, family conflict, and long-term reputational damage. The hidden bank account was no longer just a financial issue. It had become a symbol of fractured trust, complex relationships, and the high cost of secrecy in a family under constant observation. The uncovering of the account marked a turning point, setting the stage for Harry's unprecedented public apology. It was a revelation that forced him to consider the consequences of inaction, of silence, and of continued secrecy. By going public, he was acknowledging not only the financial realities, but also the emotional and ethical dimensions of the situation. He had to navigate the treacherous waters of family loyalty, marital loyalty, and public expectation, all while maintaining his own sense of integrity and purpose. But the hidden account was only the beginning. What palace insiders described as the most shocking revelation was yet to come, a series of financial maneuvers that went beyond what anyone expected. Assets had been moved, transactions structured, and holdings kept deliberately opaque, raising the question, what was Meghan planning, and why had Harry not been aware? The complexity of the account, combined with its secrecy, painted a picture that was as intriguing as it was alarming. And as the palace prepared for the inevitable fallout, one thing became clear: the story was far from over. Harry's path forward was fraught with uncertainty. Confrontation, apology, and public disclosure were on the horizon, but so were the consequences, both personal and institutional. The hidden bank account had created a situation where honesty, loyalty, and transparency were no longer optional. Every move Harry made would be scrutinized, every word weighed, every gesture analyzed for sincerity. The monarchy, long accustomed to controlling narratives and managing crises, was facing a challenge unlike any it had seen in recent years. And at the center of it all stood Harry, caught between love, duty, and the inescapable reality of betrayal. As the first chapter of this scandal unfolded, questions multiplied. How did Meghan manage to keep the account hidden? Were there others aware of its existence? How would Harry navigate the complex web of personal and public obligations that now threatened to unravel his relationships and his reputation? These questions set the stage for the dramatic events that would follow, drawing the world's attention and leaving insiders scrambling to manage a situation that had escalated far beyond initial expectations. And just as the palace braces for what comes next, one undeniable fact emerges. The hidden bank account is not merely a footnote in the Sussex's story. It is a catalyst, a spark that ignites tensions, exposes vulnerabilities, and forces confrontations that have been simmering beneath the surface for years. What happened in the quiet offices of the palace, surrounded by spreadsheets and confidential files, would soon explode into a public spectacle, one that would test loyalties, challenge assumptions, and redefine relationships in ways no one could have predicted. Harry had always been caught between two worlds. On one side, there was the monarchy, tradition, duty, expectation, and a lineage stretching back centuries. On the other, there was Meghan Markle, a modern woman with ambition, influence, and a vision for their shared life. Loving her was effortless. Loving the institution that had shaped him, that demanded his every move, was complicated. But nothing had prepared him for the storm unleashed by the hidden bank account revelation. Suddenly, Harry was confronted with the ultimate test: loyalty versus love. Could he defend Meghan while remaining loyal to his family? Could he acknowledge wrongdoing without betraying the person he vowed to protect? From the moment the discovery came to light, Harry's mind raced. He remembered the early days of their courtship, The promises whispered in quiet moments, the plans for a future together. Meghan had confided in him, shared her dreams, and entrusted him with her fears. And yet, here was a secret that undermined everything. The hidden bank account wasn't just about money. It was about trust, about transparency, about the bond between two people. It was a betrayal, yes, but it was also a puzzle. Why keep such a secret? Was it fear, pride, or strategy? Harry couldn't reconcile the woman he loved with the person capable of such concealment. And so the internal conflict began, intensifying with every passing hour. The palace, for its part, remained tense. Advisors attempted to mediate, to prepare for the inevitable confrontation, but the emotional stakes were high. The monarchy thrives on appearances, on control, on seamless execution. Harry's dilemma threatened all of that. He had to decide quickly whether to shield Meghan, risk public scandal, or confront the truth at the cost of personal heartbreak. Each option carried weighty consequences. Silence could be interpreted as complicity. Disclosure could fracture relationships permanently, and acting without evidence could make him look impulsive, reckless, or naive. The pressure was immense, and the walls seemed to close in. In private moments, Harry questioned everything. Could he maintain the loyalty expected of a prince while protecting the woman he loved? Could he defend her in the public eye while acknowledging the pain caused to his father and brother? These questions gnawed at him, and late nights were spent replaying conversations, analyzing motives, and considering outcomes. He thought back to Princess Diana, her struggles with media scrutiny, her unwavering devotion to her children. Could he honor her legacy and still make the difficult choices required of him now? The answer was anything but simple. Every conversation with Meghan became a tightrope walk. He had to weigh his words carefully, maintain a delicate balance between support and confrontation. One misstep, one misinterpreted phrase, could escalate tensions irreversibly. Sources close to the couple describe moments of silent frustration, long walks in the gardens, and whispered arguments behind closed doors. Emotions ran high, love, loyalty, anger, and fear all colliding in a swirl that was difficult to navigate. It was a human drama of the highest order, playing out under the unrelenting gaze of the public and the media. At the same time, Harry had to consider the monarchy. He had been raised in its shadow, taught the importance of duty, trained to serve, and expected to act with honor and discretion. His loyalty to his father and brother was instinctual, but now it was being tested like never before. The hidden bank account challenged not just his marriage, but his sense of identity, responsibility, and moral compass. Every decision he made had ramifications for the institution, for public perception, and for the fragile bonds holding the family together. Harry's dilemma was emblematic of the broader struggle faced by those living at the intersection of personal and public life. How do you reconcile private love with public duty when both are at odds? Compounding this emotional burden were the whispers from insiders, the leaks, and the constant speculation. The world was watching, and Harry knew that the narrative could easily spiral out of his control. He needed to act, but carefully, with precision, and with consideration for every angle. Advisors urged him to wait, to gather evidence, to strategize. Friends advised him to protect Meghan at all costs. His inner circle debated endlessly, weighing loyalty against love, secrecy against honesty. And Harry, caught between all of it, felt the pressure mounting like never before. The emotional intensity of the moment was magnified by the personal stakes. Harry had invested years into his relationship with Meghan, into building a life and identity separate from the press, the palace, and public expectations. But now, all of that seemed threatened. The hidden bank account was more than a financial issue. It was a test of character, a challenge to his loyalty, and a probe into the limits of his love. Could he continue to support Meghan without losing himself or alienating his family? Or would the very act of defending her ultimately drive a wedge between him and those he cared about most? These were questions without easy answers, and the hours stretched long as he wrestled with them in solitude. Even Harry's public persona came into play. Every move, every statement, every appearance could be scrutinized for hidden meaning. Could he maintain the composure expected of a royal while processing personal betrayal? Could he craft a narrative that protected Meghan without undermining the monarchy? The stakes were immense, and the margin for error was razor thin. Every choice carried consequences, every word could be twisted, and every silence could be misinterpreted. It was a high-stakes balancing act, performed on a stage where failure could have far-reaching repercussions. In the midst of this storm, Harry began to consider a path that had previously seemed impossible: public acknowledgement of the truth. The idea was terrifying, but also liberating. By confronting the situation head-on, he could regain a measure of control, assert his integrity, and address the growing tension between love and loyalty. It would not be easy, and it would not be without risk. But in the quiet moments of reflection, Harry realized that secrecy and silence were no longer options. The world would learn the truth eventually, and if he did not speak first, he risked losing not only trust but credibility, love, and family forever. And then came the moment of decision. After countless hours of internal debate, consultations with advisors, and conversations with Meghan, Harry understood the path he had to take. He would confront the situation publicly. He would apologize to his father and brother, acknowledge the complexity of the circumstances, and take responsibility for what had transpired. It would be unprecedented, risky, and emotionally taxing, but it was the only way to navigate the storm that now threatened to engulf his personal and public life. The path forward was clear, but the road would be treacherous. The public apology would not just be about words. It would be about conveying sincerity, accountability, and emotional truth. Harry had to prepare for criticism, for misunderstanding, and for backlash. He had to anticipate every angle, every interpretation, and every potential reaction. And as the hours ticked down to the moment of disclosure, the emotional weight pressed down like never before. Every heartbeat was a reminder of what was at stake: love, loyalty, family, and legacy, all hanging in the balance. But even as Harry steeled himself for the public apology, one question loomed larger than all others. Would it be enough? Could an apology bridge the gap between loyalty and love, between betrayal and forgiveness? Or had the hidden bank account already set in motion a chain of events that would forever alter the dynamic of the royal family? Harry's dilemma had reached its climax, and the world was about to witness the fallout. Prince William had always carried himself with a sense of duty, a steady composure honed over decades under the relentless gaze of the public and press. He was the heir apparent, trained to navigate crises with a mixture of prudence and authority. But nothing in his life had prepared him for the revelation that Harry's public apology would bring, nor for the news that Meghan Markle had been hiding a bank account from both brothers. The disclosure struck him like a physical blow, leaving him momentarily speechless. His shock wasn't just about money. It was about trust, family, and the stark realization that the man he had called his brother might be caught in a web of secrets and deception that went far deeper than anyone had imagined. William's first reactions were private, intense, and deeply personal. In the quiet confines of his study at Kensington Palace, he sat with advisors and close aides, processing the news. Reports indicate that his initial response was a mixture of disbelief and anger. How could this happen under their collective watch? How could Harry have been kept in the dark, misled, or, worse, complicit? For William, the situation was not only a matter of familial loyalty. It was a potential threat to the monarchy itself. The optics of scandal, especially one involving financial secrecy, could ripple across the media landscape, undermining years of careful reputation management. As he absorbed the news, William's thoughts returned to his own experiences with Harry. The brothers had grown up side by side, sharing childhood memories, family holidays, and the unspoken bond that comes with shared tragedy. Yet, as the hidden bank account revelation sank in, he realized that trust, so fundamental to their relationship, had been compromised. It wasn't merely about Meghan or money. It was about the understanding that brothers should be allies, confidants, and protectors of one another. That understanding had been called into question in a way that was both shocking and deeply personal. The palace was abuzz with speculation, but William's shock manifested in measured, calculated silence. Unlike Harry, who had already decided on public apology, William's approach was deliberate, carefully considered. Advisors describe long hours of discussion, reviewing documents, cross-checking financial records, and attempting to understand the scale and scope of the hidden account. Each revelation added layers of complexity. Every transaction seemed deliberate, carefully orchestrated, and difficult to reconcile with the image of honesty and transparency expected within the royal family. William's mind raced. Could this have been an oversight, or was there a more deliberate plan at work? The ambiguity only heightened the tension. Observers who have studied William's behavior over the years noted subtle signs of emotional turmoil, tightened jaw, brief glances that hinted at disbelief, and moments of silent contemplation. Public appearances, as always, demanded composure, but behind closed doors, he was grappling with raw, unfiltered reactions. The palace, accustomed to managing crises, recognized the gravity of the situation. William's response would not just influence family dynamics. It would signal to the public, to the media, and to international observers how the monarchy intended to navigate this unprecedented scandal. The pressure was immense, and the weight of expectation bore heavily on his shoulders. The emotional spike in William's response was compounded by history. The brothers had shared triumphs and tribulations alike. From the loss of their mother to the challenges of growing up under intense public scrutiny. Their bond had been tested before, but never like this. The hidden bank account wasn't just a betrayal of trust. It was a betrayal of the shared history and loyalty that had defined their relationship. William reportedly struggled with the duality of emotions. Love for his brother, anger at the circumstances, and a profound sense of disappointment that someone he trusted implicitly could be involved in secrecy of this magnitude. At the same time, William had to consider the broader implications for the monarchy. Any family dispute, especially one involving financial secrecy, could quickly become a public spectacle. Advisors urged caution, emphasizing the need for a measured approach that would protect both personal relationships and institutional reputation. But the emotional impact of the revelation was undeniable. William's silence was not passive. It was the product of careful thought, processing, and strategizing. He knew that one wrong word, one ill-considered action, could exacerbate the crisis and further strain familial bonds. As the hours turned into days, William's strategy began to take shape. He would not react impulsively. He would observe, gather information, and prepare for confrontation, all while maintaining the appearance of calm and composure in public. The challenge was immense. How to address betrayal and secrecy without alienating his brother, inflaming the media, or triggering wider scandal. For William, the stakes were both personal and professional, intertwining family loyalty with duty to the crown. It was a delicate, almost impossible, balancing act. The emotional intensity of William's response was further heightened by public perception. The media, ever vigilant, had begun to speculate about the rift between the brothers, the hidden account, and the impending fallout. Social media platforms buzzed with analysis, conjecture, and rumors. Headlines questioned loyalty, integrity, and trust within the royal family. Memes and commentaries amplified every perceived slight, every awkward glance, every subtle gesture. For William, managing this perception was critical. Every private emotion had to be balanced against public scrutiny. Every personal grievance weighed against the risk of further exposure. Even within the palace, tensions were palpable. Advisors and aides recognized that William's shock, while personal, had professional consequences. Decisions had to be made. How to approach Harry, how to respond to media leaks, and how to protect the integrity of the monarchy while navigating deeply personal conflict. William was not just processing betrayal. He was considering strategy, optics, and the long-term impact on the institution he was preparing to inherit. The weight of this responsibility pressed down heavily, amplifying every emotional response and intensifying the stakes of every decision. Amid the tension, moments of reflection revealed William's vulnerability. Reports suggest he spent hours contemplating the nature of trust, the fragility of relationships, and the burden of expectation. He questioned not just Harry's actions, but the systemic pressures that had led to secrecy, misunderstanding, and ultimately, public disclosure. Could the pressures of fame, duty, and public scrutiny have created circumstances where honesty became difficult, where secrecy seemed necessary? These questions lingered, complicating his response and deepening the emotional impact of the scandal. The silence that defined William's initial reaction was strategic, but also deeply telling. It reflected a man grappling with shock, disappointment, and the reality that his family had been thrust into unprecedented territory. He understood that the upcoming confrontation with Harry would not just be about the hidden account, but about loyalty, trust, and the future of their relationship. Every choice he made, every word he spoke, would carry immense weight. The palace, accustomed to careful orchestration, had never faced a situation so fraught with personal and public tension. And as the world waited, William remained still, silent, processing, and planning. But then came the first private confrontation, a conversation that insiders say was intense, emotionally charged, and laden with unspoken truths. Words were exchanged, some measured, some raw, some trembling with emotion. The silence shattered. William demanded clarity. Harry sought understanding. And in that room, behind closed doors, the unspoken tensions of years, childhood rivalry, shared grief, diverging paths, erupted. Every sentence, every pause, every glance became a battlefield of loyalty, love, and betrayal. It was a confrontation that would shape not just their relationship, but the public narrative of the scandal yet to unfold. And just as the confrontation reached its peak, neither could anticipate the reaction of King Charles, the moment that would escalate the crisis beyond anything they had prepared for. King Charles had always carried the weight of the monarchy with a careful, deliberate hand. Every decision, every statement, every public appearance was measured, calculated, and steeped in centuries of protocol. But when the news of Meghan Markle's hidden bank account reached him, even he was taken aback. The revelation was more than a financial complication. It was a crisis that cut straight to the heart of family trust, loyalty, and the reputation of the crown itself. For Charles, it was a moment that demanded both a father's instinct and a monarch's authority. He had to act, and act decisively, before the storm spiraled further out of control. From the start, Charles approached the situation with the precision of a strategist. Advisors were called in, documents reviewed, and private meetings scheduled. Unlike William, whose reaction had been initially emotional, Charles processed the news through the lens of duty and legacy. He understood the stakes. Any misstep could trigger public scandal, erode trust in the monarchy, and intensify the rift between his sons. Every decision had to be measured, every word considered, and every action timed to minimize fallout while addressing the betrayal at hand. But even as he focused on strategy, the emotional dimension could not be ignored. This was, after all, his family, his sons, his daughter-in-law, and the complex web of loyalty and love that tied them together. Reports indicate that Charles's first step was private consultation. He summoned advisors, accountants, and legal experts to assess the scope of Meghan's hidden account and the implications of Harry's public apology. Every detail mattered. The amount of money, the sources of the funds, the movement of assets, and the potential legal and ethical ramifications. For Charles, understanding the full picture was crucial. Acting on incomplete information could worsen the situation, but hesitation could allow the scandal to spiral beyond control. It was a delicate balance between caution and urgency, one that demanded his full attention. Beyond the practicalities, Charles was forced to confront the personal dimensions of the scandal. He had raised Harry with care, guidance, and love, attempting to prepare him for a life under constant public scrutiny. And yet, here was his son, caught between loyalty to family and loyalty to his wife, publicly apologizing for circumstances that Charles himself had barely begun to comprehend. The tension between paternal instinct and royal duty weighed heavily on him. How could he discipline or guide his son without alienating him? How could he protect the monarchy without appearing cold or distant? Every question seemed to carry 100 implications, each more complex than the last. As the palace deliberated, Charles also had to consider the optics of the unfolding situation. The public had already begun to speculate on the reasons behind Harry's apology, Meghan's secrecy, and the hidden bank account. Headlines ranged from accusations of theft to commentary on fractured family relationships. Social media buzzed with analysis, memes, and conjecture, amplifying every nuance of the story. For Charles, controlling the narrative was essential, not to suppress truth, but to maintain the integrity of the monarchy while managing the very human emotions of disappointment, betrayal, and outrage that the scandal had provoked. In his private discussions with advisors, Charles reportedly emphasized transparency, accountability, and the need for measured action. Yet he also understood that the emotional component could not be ignored. Harry's apology, while public, was only the beginning. The underlying issues of trust, family loyalty, and personal accountability would need to be addressed in private. Charles, balancing his role as monarch and father, recognized that the coming weeks would require delicate diplomacy, strategic planning, and emotional intelligence of the highest order. At the same time, Charles began reaching out to William. The king understood that the relationship between his sons had been strained long before this scandal, and that William's initial shock and silence could either be a stabilizing force or a catalyst for further conflict. Private conversations, filled with emotion, reasoning, and paternal guidance, sought to prepare William for the eventual public and private confrontations that lay ahead. Charles needed both sons to navigate the crisis, to restore trust, and to manage public perception with a level of unity that seemed almost impossible given the circumstances. Meanwhile, Charles also turned his attention to Harry. Reports suggest that the king's approach was a mixture of sternness, concern, and counsel. He reminded Harry of the responsibilities inherent in being a member of the royal family, the weight of public expectation, and the personal consequences of secrecy and miscommunication. At the same time, he acknowledged the difficulty of Harry's position. The love and loyalty he felt toward Meghan, the pressure of public scrutiny, and the emotional strain of managing complex family dynamics. It was a delicate conversation, one in which Charles had to assert authority while maintaining compassion. The dynamics between father and son were complicated further by the public nature of Harry's apology. While Charles had long been experienced in managing media crises, a personal family apology broadcasted worldwide was unprecedented. Every word, every expression, and every nuance was dissected by the press, the public, and palace staff. Charles understood that he had to navigate both the private consequences and the public fallout, balancing empathy, authority, and strategic thinking in equal measure. In addition to family dynamics, Charles also had to consider Meghan. The Duchess of Sussex was central to the scandal, yet Charles approached the situation with careful neutrality. He recognized her influence on Harry, her impact on public perception, and her role in the financial secrecy that had now come to light. While his private stance reflected disappointment and concern, it also acknowledged the complexity of the situation. A modern marriage intersecting with centuries of royal expectation, media scrutiny, and public interest. Navigating this intersection required both diplomacy and emotional intelligence. The palace's internal strategy meetings revealed the full extent of Charles's careful planning. He weighed options for addressing the hidden account publicly, preparing for Harry's apology, and managing the reactions of William, the royal family, and the media. He considered the timing of statements, the framing of communications, and the involvement of advisors, all while anticipating potential leaks, misinterpretations, and escalations. Each decision carried immense weight, and Charles approached them with the measured precision of a monarch trained for decades in navigating crises. Yet despite the meticulous planning, Charles could not ignore the human element, the personal betrayals, the fractured trust, and the emotional strain that threatened to destabilize not only his sons but the monarchy itself. He recognized that managing a scandal of this magnitude required more than strategy. It required empathy, emotional resilience, and the ability to anticipate the reactions of those at the heart of the crisis. As the days progressed, Charles began preparing for the eventual confrontation with Harry. It would not be an easy conversation. It would test their bond as father and son, challenge Harry's perceptions of loyalty, and force both men to reconcile personal feelings with public duty. The king knew that every word, every gesture, and every pause would carry significance far beyond the room in which they spoke. He also understood that this was only the beginning. The hidden account, Harry's apology, and the brewing family tension were part of a larger narrative that would unfold in unexpected and dramatic ways. And then, just as Charles was preparing his approach, a new piece of information emerged, something that neither Harry nor William had anticipated. A financial document, hidden in plain sight, revealed connections and intentions that would escalate the scandal beyond anything previously imagined. The king's careful deliberation had prepared him for crisis, but this revelation changed the entire game. The royal family stood at the edge of a precipice, and Charles, with his decades of experience, understood that the coming days would test not just loyalty, but legacy, love, and the very foundation of trust that held the monarchy together. The world was waiting. Every headline, every social media post, every whisper in the corridors of the palace had set the stage for the moment that would change the trajectory of the royal family. Prince Harry, caught between loyalty, love, and the explosive revelation of Meghan Markle's hidden bank account, had made his decision. He would go public. He would apologize to his father and brother, not just privately behind closed doors, but in a statement that would be broadcast and dissected globally. The anticipation was electric. How would he phrase it? What words would capture his regret, his loyalty, and the emotional turmoil that had gripped him for days? The pressure was immense, and the stakes could not have been higher. From the start, the apology was meticulously prepared. Harry knew that one misstep could inflame an already tense situation. Advisors helped craft the language, balancing sincerity with diplomacy, remorse with explanation. But despite the preparation, the emotional weight could not be scripted. As Harry rehearsed the words in front of the mirror, he felt the tension coil in his chest. This was more than a public statement. It was a personal reckoning, a reckoning that would redefine his relationships with William, Charles, and Meghan, and signal to the world how he intended to navigate the scandal that had engulfed his life. The opening moments of the apology were striking. Harry began with acknowledgement, an unflinching admission that mistakes had been made, that secrecy had consequences, and that trust had been fractured. He spoke directly to his father and brother, recognizing the hurt his actions and circumstances had caused. The tone was raw, emotional, and unlike any royal statement the public had seen before. There was no scripted detachment, no polished diplomacy, only the vulnerable truth of a son and brother confronting the fallout of betrayal. Observers noted the subtle emotional spikes in Harry's delivery. A pause here, a slight tremor in his voice there, each moment underscoring the depth of his internal conflict. He admitted that, in his loyalty to Meghan, he had failed to fully disclose important information. He acknowledged that secrecy, intentional or not, had consequences, and he expressed a sincere desire to rebuild trust, not just with his father and brother, but with the institution that had shaped him from birth. Every word carried weight. Every phrase reflected the emotional and ethical complexity of the moment. But Harry's apology was not only about acknowledging mistakes. It was a carefully orchestrated attempt to navigate a complicated landscape of love, loyalty, and public expectation. He framed his statements in a way that demonstrated understanding of the monarchy's concerns while still conveying his own perspective and emotional truth. It was a delicate balancing act. He could not alienate Meghan, nor could he ignore the pain caused to his father and brother. The statement was designed to bridge that gap, to restore some semblance of equilibrium, and to signal his willingness to engage in dialogue and reconciliation. Public reaction was immediate and intense. Within hours, headlines erupted worldwide. Analysts dissected every word, evaluating tone, phrasing, and implication. Social media exploded with debate, memes, and speculation. Supporters praised Harry's courage, his honesty, and his willingness to confront difficult truths. Critics condemned him for perceived oversharing, for airing family grievances publicly, or for not fully acknowledging the financial implications of Meghan's hidden bank account. Every reaction amplified the tension, forcing the palace, the public, and Harry himself to navigate an unprecedented landscape of scrutiny, judgment, and emotion. At the same time, the apology revealed fractures in relationships that had previously been concealed. William, who had been silent for days, responded privately and cautiously. Sources indicate that he appreciated Harry's acknowledgement but remained wary, skeptical of motives, and unsure how to proceed. Charles, meanwhile, weighed the apology against decades of family history, public duty, and personal disappointment. The king recognized Harry's effort to reconcile but also understood that healing would take time, and that public perception could not be easily managed. The apology was a first step, not a resolution, and it carried implications that would ripple through the family and the monarchy for years to come. Behind the scenes, Meghan watched with a mixture of relief, apprehension, and curiosity. Her hidden bank account had been exposed, and now Harry had taken responsibility publicly. While this was a show of support and loyalty, it also brought scrutiny directly onto her. Advisors worked to manage the narrative, highlighting Harry's honesty while downplaying financial controversies. But the emotional and strategic complexity was immense. Every word of the apology reflected not just Harry's intentions, but also the ripple effects that Meghan's secrecy had created. The moment underscored the delicate interplay between personal relationships, public perception, and the weight of royalty. The emotional intensity of the apology was magnified by the context in which it was delivered. Harry spoke not just as a prince, but as a son and a brother, someone deeply affected by betrayal, secrecy, and the challenge of reconciling love and duty. Each sentence reflected the gravity of the situation, the difficulty of managing private and public consequences, and the human vulnerability often hidden behind royal protocol. For viewers, the statement offered an intimate glimpse into the internal struggles of a man navigating extraordinary circumstances with honesty and courage. Yet, despite its eloquence and emotional resonance, the apology left questions unanswered. Observers wondered, how would Meghan respond publicly or privately? Would William forgive Harry fully, or would the rift remain? How would the monarchy manage ongoing scrutiny, speculation, and potential fallout? And most critically, what further revelations could emerge from the financial investigation into the hidden bank account? Each unanswered question heightened the drama, maintaining a sense of suspense that captivated both the public and royal insiders alike. The apology also had a strategic dimension. By addressing the situation directly, Harry aimed to regain a measure of control over the narrative. In a world where the media thrives on secrecy, speculation, and scandal, transparency can be a powerful tool. Harry's statement was designed to preempt further leaks, assert his integrity, and demonstrate accountability. It was also a signal to the palace and the public that he was willing to engage in reconciliation, to confront the consequences of his decisions, and to navigate the complex interplay of family loyalty, love, and public duty. As the statement concluded, Harry's final words underscored the human cost of the scandal. He acknowledged the pain caused, expressed a desire to rebuild trust, and hinted at the emotional and relational work that lay ahead. There was no resolution, no neat ending. Only a recognition that healing would be gradual, challenging, and fraught with difficulty. The public, the family, and Harry himself were left to navigate the uncertain terrain that followed, each step carrying profound implications for relationships, reputation, and legacy. And just as the world digested the apology, palace insiders revealed an unexpected twist. William's next move, unanticipated and decisive, would escalate tensions further. The response was not merely emotional. It was strategic, public, and designed to assert authority in a way that shocked everyone watching. The stage was set for the next dramatic act in a scandal that had already captured global attention. The silence that had dominated the royal household in the aftermath of Harry's public apology was finally shattered. Prince William, long perceived as the calm, measured counterpart to his younger brother's emotional intensity, was ready to act. Observers say that for days, William had been absorbing every detail, weighing every implication, and planning a response that would assert authority, protect the monarchy, and, most importantly, re-establish his position as a stabilizing force within the family. What came next would shock both palace insiders and the global audience, redefining the dynamics of the brothers' relationship and setting the stage for an unprecedented confrontation. William's strategy was subtle but deliberate. He understood that reaction alone could not suffice. He had to demonstrate decisiveness, clarity, and control. And so, with advisors at his side, he crafted a response that would send a clear message to Harry, Meghan, and the world. The monarchy and family integrity came first. Sources reveal that the Prince of Wales began by privately confronting Harry, dissecting every word of his public apology, every implication of the hidden bank account, and every perceived lapse in judgment. The conversation, insiders report, was intense, tense, emotional, and at times nearly explosive. William demanded transparency, accountability, and reassurance that loyalty would no longer be compromised. He needed Harry to understand that actions carried consequences, not just for himself, but for the entire royal family. The confrontation was not merely verbal. William's approach was assertive, signaling to Harry that this was no ordinary dispute, but a matter of familial and institutional integrity. He questioned motives, highlighted inconsistencies, and challenged decisions that had allowed the hidden bank account to remain undiscovered. Harry, emotionally raw from his own turmoil, attempted to explain, defend, and contextualize, but William's stance was unyielding. According to insiders, the conversation reached moments of near collapse, with tension palpable enough that aides reportedly feared a complete breakdown in communication between the brothers. What made William's response particularly striking was its combination of personal and institutional stakes. He did not merely speak as a brother upset by secrecy. He spoke as the heir apparent, responsible for maintaining the monarchy's reputation and ensuring that familial discord did not spiral into public scandal. Every word, every gesture, and every decision was calculated to demonstrate authority, preserve dignity, and reassert control over a situation that had already drawn international scrutiny. It was a masterclass in the delicate balance of emotion and strategy, a move that would define William's approach to the unfolding crisis. Meanwhile, palace insiders were scrambling to contain the ripple effects. The hidden bank account had already ignited media speculation, public debate, and social media frenzy. Every leak, every rumor, every minor detail threatened to amplify tension and damage the royal image. William's decisive action, however, provided a focal point, a clear signal that the monarchy would not tolerate deception, secrecy, or betrayal. It also served to realign public perception, demonstrating that accountability and integrity remained core values of the institution, even in the face of familial conflict. The impact of William's move extended beyond Harry. Meghan Markle, though at first seemingly insulated, could not ignore the implications. Her secrecy had been exposed, and now the family's unified response signaled that her actions would be scrutinized more closely than ever. Advisors began discussing strategies to manage her influence, public appearances, and financial transparency. The palace sought to establish boundaries, clarify responsibilities, and ensure that the fallout from her hidden account did not escalate further. In effect, William's actions forced Meghan into a position where the consequences of secrecy, strategy, and public perception had to be reckoned with, directly and without mediation. Emotionally, the confrontation highlighted deep fractures in the sibling relationship. Childhood memories, shared grief, and long-standing rivalries resurfaced amid the tension, complicating the conversation and heightening the stakes. Both brothers were navigating a complex web of loyalty, love, and family expectation, each trying to assert their perspective while managing personal pain and public perception. Observers note that the emotional intensity of the moment was matched only by the strategic significance. This was not merely a family dispute, but a public drama with historical, social, and institutional implications. As the confrontation unfolded, William took an additional, decisive step. Insiders report that he coordinated with palace security and advisors to ensure that all potential points of conflict, financial, logistical, or personal, were monitored closely. The goal was to maintain control, prevent leaks, and signal authority. This move, while largely unseen by the public, reinforced the message: William would act decisively, strategically, and firmly to protect both his family and the institution. Every action, every decision, and every word was part of a broader plan to stabilize the monarchy amid unprecedented turmoil. Publicly, William remained composed, projecting the calm, measured demeanor for which he is known. But behind closed doors, the situation was electric. Advisors described tense meetings, rapid exchanges of information, and constant strategic recalibrations as William prepared for the next phase. Not just controlling the fallout from Harry's apology, but shaping the narrative of family loyalty, accountability, and the monarchy's enduring stability. Every choice he made now had consequences that would ripple through the palace, the media, and the world at large. And yet, despite the meticulous planning and emotional intensity, William's actions set the stage for an unforeseen twist. A piece of evidence, quietly discovered during the confrontation, hinted at a level of financial complexity and intentionality that neither Harry nor the advisors had anticipated. It suggested that Meghan's hidden account was not merely a private secret, but part of a broader, deliberate strategy that could alter perceptions of loyalty, intent, and influence within the family. This revelation added a layer of urgency and tension that transformed the confrontation from a private familial dispute into a high-stakes battle with global attention. William's next move, sources suggest, would not only assert his authority, but also expose the deeper intricacies of the scandal, forcing Harry, Meghan, and the monarchy itself into a position of unprecedented vulnerability. The palace, already on edge, prepared for public fallout, media scrutiny, and the complex emotional aftermath that would inevitably follow. And at the center of it all stood William, poised to redefine the rules of engagement, loyalty, and accountability within the royal family. Just when the palace thought it had regained a measure of control, Meghan Markle made a move that no one saw coming. The hidden bank account had already thrown the royal family into chaos, but now, the Duchess of Sussex was about to escalate the situation to an entirely new level. What started as a private secret now spilled into the public sphere, not through Harry or William, but directly from Meghan herself. It was calculated, audacious, and strategically timed, leaving advisors, family, and the media scrambling to respond. Reports from insiders suggest that Meghan had been quietly coordinating her next step for days. While Harry had delivered his heartfelt public apology, Meghan remained in the